We really are welcoming here today. And Crystal, who do we have here on stage with us?
Actually, it worked out perfectly because we actually have two attorneys
All right.
on stage today, but both of them have extensive corporate background. But this gentleman here, Urban League is really close to my heart, and you know that I've been doing a lot of collaborative work with them for the last 10 years, as long as I've been the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, and I love the Urban League. And but today we have the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Urban League. He's currently serving there, one of the oldest and most respected civil rights organizations in the United States, dedicated providing economic empowerment, educational opportunities, and the guarantee of civil rights for underserved communities in the Los Angeles area. He began his service as the interim president in November 2017 and was appointed to the president in 2018. In September of 2013, he was nominated by President Obama to serve as the United States ambassador to the Council of International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, a UN specialized agency, in a position that he held from July 14 to January 2017. The 36 member of the ICAO Council set the standards and recommended practices and policies in support of international civil aviation sector worldwide. Before serving as the ambassador, he served on the board of airport commissioners for the Los Angeles Airport from 2005 to 2011. And the president of the BOAC from 2008 to 2011. And during his tenure, the board was responsible for overseeing the management of the systems of airports under its control, including Los Angeles International Airport, LA, Ontario International, and Van Nuys. And from 1980 to 2011, he practiced law at the prestigious international law firm Skadden, Arps, Slate, Mar, okay, and Flom. LLP.
With that being said, we'll just have him tell us a little more about it.
Right, exactly. And it's a firm, the largest law firm in the world, with 1,700 attorneys and 22 offices around the world. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
So pleased to have you.
Welcome to the Business Zone, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
The Urban League, as I said, is near and dear. And one of the reasons is that my uncle had a career at the Urban League under John Mack, and he actually spearheaded, along with John Mack, the LEAP program, which was, I guess, a $5 million program, which helped contractors or those in the trades get into the trades. And so many of the tradesmen, all levels, the reason they have their license is because he helped them with the pre-testing. So we're now actually in talks again. My uncle still has that program, been doing that program for a long time. And so we talked to Brian over at the Urban League. And so he...
Our COO.
Right. So he's bringing his team of young men, of people, and they're training new guys that are come out of and gotten their license and now retired in the trade, and they're still reaching back to and bringing in and recruiting new people for the construction industry.
Excellent. That's so important right now because Los Angeles is ground zero for the most the biggest infrastructure projects in the country are going on right here between Metro and Los Angeles World Airports and other public-private partnerships. There's more digging going on in Los Angeles than anywhere else in the world.
Yes, we know because we get stuck in traffic all the time. But it is great that we're in a growth process. It appears that it is a great time for us as Black people living in Los Angeles to change our economics, but how do we do that? What are the methodologies? And I think one of the reasons I collaborate is I know we cannot do this in silos, and I know we cannot do this by ourselves. We all have to come together to make a change for our business communities and our families and our children.
Yes, absolutely. You asked the right question, which is how do we move forward and not spend too much more time on why we're here, because we are here because of centuries of discrimination, centuries of holding us back, centuries of making sure that we do not get our fair share of what's of the bounty that was this country and is this country. But there is a pathway forward, and it's going to involve all of us. It's got to be all hands on deck. We can't sit back and wait for someone else to do something for us or give us a hand, because we have got the ability to do it. We just have to put our heads together and make sure that we're holding each other's hands and walking the walk and talking the talk.
That's great. That's great.
And we were having, while you were watching us, having this wonderful conversation with Shawn on some avenues and some solutions, because that's where we should be right now, is that solution orientation as opposed to we all know what the problems are. We need to not keep talking and beating them to death. Now we just have to have some sort of solution. So what do you guys think? I mean, in addition to what she's speaking of.
I was fascinated by the conversation and very encouraged by the conversation. Everything you're talking about is critical to making sure that we have the ability to compete in the market on a level playing field, because there hasn't been a level playing field.
Right.
And the algorithmic approach is something that is critical. The FICO score is too broad and doesn't give the correct picture of the people and the businesses or the people that stand behind them. But I would also say that that's not enough.
Right.
The algorithms are going to give additional metrics, and the additional metrics plus the work that you're doing in terms of helping our entrepreneurs cross the T's and dot the I's in terms of the way they manage their business is going to be very helpful.
Yes, yes.
But one of the key elements has got to be relationships with the people that have the money to lend, have the money to invest.
Yes.
We have to develop those relationships, and we have to be upfront about the necessity for them. And let's be clear, the majority, the other communities that are above us in terms of access to capital and access to credit have the same blemishes that we do. If not more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But they still have access to credit and access to capital. And why is that?
There's privilege on their side.
Well, but what is the source of that privilege? The source of that privilege is a relationship between them and the people that have the money.
That is true.
So one of the things that we have to do is develop those relationships. Number one, we have to do what we can to increase the number of financial institutions within our community that are able to play on that side of the game. But even without that, we have to be intentional about developing relationships with the money lending part of the economy. I first saw a glimpse of this when I first started at Skadden Arps. The year is 1980. Carter interest rates are 18%. The prime rate was 18%.
Wow.
You know, we're looking to buy a house. And because of the relationship between Skadden Arps and Citibank, every attorney in the firm was automatically a member of Citibank's private bank. So for me to get a loan, all I had to do was call over there and say, please send me an application. They send an application over. I never see anybody.
So they don't know what your skin color is.
They don't know what my skin color is, and they assume, of course, that I'm not black because Skadden doesn't hire black people. Fill out the application, send it in, get the loan, get the house at 18%, what have you. A couple of years later, rates come down to a manageable 13%. Yeah, it was manageable. So it's time to refinance.
Right.
Call them up, ask for the form. She sends it over. I fill out the form, send it back. She calls me up. She says, Mr. Lawson, we have a little bit of a problem. You have too much personal debt on this application. You don't meet the criteria. Do you mind if we white these out?
Wow.
So now you're beginning to see the workings of it, how it works.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
Wow.
You know,
So it doesn't matter for them if they meet the criteria.
Right.
They'll white it out.
Right.
So let's fast forward to 25 years later.
Yeah.
I'm now a partner. My sons have graduated Morehouse College. They're investing in real estate. And I helped support them in getting the real estate. So the loan is in my name, and we want to refinance again. So the bank calls up and says, I'm not retired, quite frankly, from the firm.
Okay.
And I get this call from the banker saying, Mr. Lawson, we're working on the refinancing of your loan, but there's a mistake on your application. You put your annual income in the monthly income box. I said, no, that's my monthly.
I love it. I love it.
Just to rub off on you.
But he doesn't stop there. Oh, well, can we see a copy of your bank statements for the last 3 months? Send them those. Can we see the bank
Tax
statements
return.
for the 3 months before that? Can we see a copy of your? Because I'm retired.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we see a copy of your retirement letter?
Oh, my
Sure.
Lord.
Can we see an original copy?
Now you don't have this law firm behind you.
Well, because I don't have a relationship with this particular
That's
bank.
right.
Right.
Exactly.
So all of my boxes are checked.
Check.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We have to develop relationships with the financial. First of all, we have to build the financial institutions within our community so
Yes.
we don't have to go outside.
That's what
Right,
I'm talking
exactly.
about.
I mean, understand that in this town, when you look at the stats in the Korean community, a dollar that goes into the Korean community stays there for over 50 days. And that multiplier effect is why the Korean community looks the way it does.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they also there's something circulating on social media, and I was trying to find it, and I think it was an interview, and they were interviewing. I want to say he was a Japanese businessman or a Chinese businessman. His name is Chang, and so he was being interviewed, and they were asking him his relation about white supremacy, and also what he thought, his views on Black America. And so he basically said, if you're a minority, you are dealing with white supremacy. Doesn't matter what minority you're dealing, who you are, it just you are. He says, but the way we as Asians deal with it is, if you tell us that we can't get a loan at your bank, then we go build our own bank. You tell us our children can't go to your school, then we build our own school. Our focus is on our people. It's not that we don't like Black people. We just like our people more. And we're supposed to. So we take care of our own first. Then we worry about outside. So we don't want our people to be hungry. We don't want them to be uneducated, and we don't want them to be successful. So we make sure we give them jobs. We do everything in our own. He says, but the difference between us and them is we do it quietly. We don't have to have mass marches to do what we're going to do. We just do it, and we do it together. And that's why we are slowly moving in. And they're almost like under the radar because no one's really paying attention to them to do what they're doing because they're not making any big noises about it. They're not wearing their wealth around their neck and they're on their cars or any of that. But they're in their communities doing what they're doing, taking care of their own.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And that is a model that we clearly have to emulate, but we don't have to emulate it on our own. I mean, the fact is that we have been, everybody on this panel understands the math of investing and the math of the multiplier effect and so on and so forth. And you know that the worst thing you can do to follow that model is lose money. Losing money is worse than gaining a small amount. Yeah. And we have lost is the wrong way. The assets that we had have been taken away from us forcefully through the enslavement period and after. You look what happened in Oklahoma with our Black Wall Street. You look at what all of the things that you guys have been talking about have been ripped from us. Yes. And so we're starting at less than zero in a lot of different ways. So, but let's not talk about the past. The question is, what do we do going forward? Yeah. We have to, number one, change the focus to the one that you just described. That is absolutely critical, Crystal. We have to be looking at the next generation and the generation after that. What are we going to accumulate in order to pass on to them the assets that are necessary for them to start not at square one, but at square 10 in a 15 square race. Right. So that's critical, but we also don't have to do it by ourselves. I mean, you talked about this Mr. Chang. There are alliances that we can create that will allow us, while we're building our financial institutions, because we have to do that. Yeah. We have to rebuild, and we had them, and we can talk about the history of what happened to them, but we need to do that in order to not make the same mistakes again. But the fact is, we need to rebuild them, and in the meantime, we need to collaborate with those who are willing to collaborate with us. And you mentioned the Chinese community. I mentioned the Korean community. One of the things that we're seeing within the Korean community is that even though they have been very successful on the economic front, and I applaud them for all of that, they have not been as successful on the political front as we have been. There is an opportunity for us to collaborate with them, build the relationships that will give us access to credit and access to capital, and work together while we are building ours, and move forward. The algorithms, we definitely have to take advantage of that, but we need relationships with the people who have the resources that are going to be beneficial for us, and we need to work together for the benefit of all underserved communities, and understand what we can do we're stronger together. There's no question about it. Yeah,
definitely stronger if you pull all that together.
I would love to just, because I served as general counsel to a black-owned bank in the Northeast, I have got to carry that point just a little bit further also about how we need to support these institutions so that they don't die. So one of the things is the history of these institutions is they started funding entrepreneurship in our community way before the other guys. When they were redlining us in the 60s and the 70s, these were the institutions that gave us residential loans, that gave us commercial loans for the funeral parlors, for the barbershop, for the beauty parlor, and they are really struggling after this last financial crisis, largely because they're saddled with a lot of new compliance requirements that they face, rightfully so, because the consumer had issues in the last financial crisis that big banks do, and it's hard for them. We don't have, when I relocated here, I realized we have more of them in the Northeast and in the South, but you can live here and have a checking account and do business with a black-owned bank in the South, in New Orleans. I have a good friend whose father is a CEO of a bank there, and he does business development. The bank I was at is in New York and New Jersey. We've got them in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. We've got them around the country. And if we don't shine a spotlight on them and give them our business, and so many of them after the last economic downturn, when I was there as a part of a turnaround team, have been trying to build virtual platforms so that they can provide services to our community across the country, and around the globe. So they're trying to get into the mobile banking that we see that's really sprouting up in parts of the African continent. And we owe these institutions an investment in their survival, even if it's just that you carry a small savings account there that allows them to build up their business base and seek other opportunities. If you have an opportunity to provide them payroll processing services or other things that they offer for your business, given the way the internet works and e-commerce works, it doesn't matter whether or not they're here in LA, you should still support them. So that's something that I feel very near and dear about. And whenever you're at your other financial institution, you should be asking them, what are you doing to support the community banks that lend when you don't? Because large financial institutions can also do joint development deals and work with community banks and offer them opportunities on very lucrative investments to be a part of that, clubbed into those investments, and all of those things we should be forcing them to do so that our institutions survive. And that's one area here in Southern California where I have seen our Asian communities really do support these financial institutions, and they are here and they're thriving. We don't see them as much, but they are here and thriving, and they really are supporting the communities here.
And actually, years ago, Recycled Black Dollars, when Muhammad was alive, and this when he founded RBD in the 1900 in 19, I think it was in the 19 something, he actually had a National Change Bank Day, and so he moved about $4 million from the other banks to Broadway Federal, and at that time it was owned by Paul. I mean, it was run by Paul. It still is run by black people, and they actually do have a relationship. They are private. They are publicly traded now, and their relationship is with the Koreans. That's who is actually there. So that's RBD has always had their account at Broadway Federal, and there are a number of our communities or black businesses that when Muhammad made that initiative, everybody moved. They're still there. But at this point, a lot of their people have retired. And so we really should think about that. And then One United has multiple branches all over. But they're kind of limited in where they lend money. I think they have some sort of criteria. I don't know if they don't do mortgages or they don't do business. I'm not quite sure which one. They don't do one of them, they don't do. But Broadway Federal does everything. They're a full lending bank.
Absolutely.
But one of the issues that Broadway Federal did, and the reason they had to combine their services with the Koreans, was they were the only bank that actually lended to churches. And they got hit hard at the recession. So they're really trying to rebuild from that. But if depositors went over there and we actually embraced them, then at least that's a local black bank in the community, or it's actually now a community-based bank. But primarily their depositors are black over there. So we have to, you're absolutely right, because you got to have people that look like us, that understand us, and while we're building capital. Because I personally believe if you have money, then it's not a credit issue, right? If you can pay your bills if you have the money, but if you got to move the money around to pay Peter, to pay Paul, because the limits are minor, I mean, you got limited resources, then you got to do what you got to do. And on top of that, take care of your family.
Absolutely. The key in what you're talking about is us being intentional about how we use our resources. We have the resources. We spend our money. It just doesn't get spent in our community.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
My question is, when we talk about these black financial institutions across the country, how do we identify them? How do we access them? What can we do to facilitate the type of approach that you just described?
Sure. So there have been, the CEOs of these institutions have been working rather actively with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. So there is actually a list of black-owned banks. And and I believe, and I can share it with you so that you
I think
can
there
put it
are
on.
38 of them or something of that
yeah.
nature. But a great deal of them right now are, it was 26. And then the increase to the 38 is that One United has opened online banking throughout the countryside. So they're in a lot of the southern states now. They at one point were just here. Their home base is in New York because that's where the owners are. But they did a mass, just right around the recession, to expand that to online banking. So they're one of the online bankers.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think when I talk to people about it, very few actually know how many there are, and that they exist. And when I say where they are, people will say, "Well, I have family there." I don't know if they even know there is one. So that some of that is just knowledge. And
so here's the map.
Are you pulling it up?
So that 26 that you're talking about, are they in California, Southern California? Where let's see. One United is the green, so they're throughout the country.
It's throughout the country,
okay.
And then you have your credit unions. And at one point, the churches were. I want to say that was back in the 70s and 80s, because I was at Fame at the time. They were even talking about our own credit unions. So I know Cherie Franklin has talked about credit unions, because that's some of the things they got to do for the cannabis, because they can't put their money in federal banks. So they're actually talking about credit unions. So for a while there was a big push on credit unions, but now basically these dots represent. And I think I can find another one that represent the banks across. But we only have One United and Broadway Federal.
Yeah,
that's it in California.
Yeah, California
and then,
but that's this historically where our populations were in large urban centers. You see them in the South and the Northeast, because that was where we had. So knowing who they are and going out of our way to find them and to use them.
I think going back to Mr. Lawson's question about how can we begin this conversation is an entity like yours, the Urban League, if you can do an invitational meeting, invite most of these guys to a meeting, a session, and discuss how we can establish partnership with them, would be a good start. Yeah. That would be a good start, and then talk about how we can prepare the entrepreneurs on our side for what they're looking for, bring that merger together. And we want long-term relationship. We don't just want a transactional business. We're looking for contractual business here. So that, to me, is a good way we can get started on that.
I agree with that. I mean, basically, we need kind of a constitutional Congress, if you will, to sit down and again be intentional about what it is we want to do. Going back to when you introduced us at the in this session, you said 2 lawyers. I want to make it clear, I'm a retired lawyer.
Sorry, but guys,
no such thing. No such thing.
It's always in the DNA, right?
Sure. Okay, we're human. You're retired.
but back when I was practicing, we never walked into a meeting without having a plan.
Right, exactly.
So I agree that we need to have this meeting, but we need to have a plan. This is what needs to be done, and we can talk about how to do it. Right. We can talk about whether you want to be in or not, but this is going to be done. Yeah. And there's going to be a core group of people who have already agreed to do it. Yeah. And we've got to have a long-term strategy for this. The major gains that we have made in the civil rights area legally and marching have always been done with a core group of strong, intelligent folks who look like us around the table, saying, "Here's how this is going to work. Here's how this is going to run," and gathering up allies to help us move it forward. And that's what we've got to do. So I would modify your suggestion with the fact that we've got to get a core group of people who are going to sit down with the knowledge of how the financial services industry works, looking at somebody who was general counsel of a bank on the East Coast. and and come up with a strategy that we can execute on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know Crystal was involved in a financial, I want to say, conference, phenomena, whatever, with the Milken Group.
Yeah, the Milken Institute.
And you guys sat down and you were trying to come together and put a system and a process together. We had the SBA in there, we had the Milken and all of that. Something similar to that.
Yeah,
and since you've already been down that road, maybe you can share some strategies that you guys use in that, and I don't know what the outcome was.
Well, actually, it was a white paper created, and I can provide you guys with that.
So it was a study.
It was a study. It was a 2-year initiative that was implemented in Los Angeles and in Baltimore, where the bulk of African Americans, entrepreneurs kind of reside, and we did it in conjunction with the SBA, with Victor Parker, and so we broke up, and he called in all of the CBOs, and we talked about the challenges and the problems, and then we actually created solutions. But then their role was, okay, now you guys need to activate. And so I think out of that came the incubator that Quentin has. That was one of them, because we talked about technical TA support, but there's more to it than just TA support, but that's kind of what they took away from it. So I can share the white papers with you. They're now working on work. There's a new initiative, and it's on workforce. But there's an organization that I met in his name is Willie. The guy's name is Willie Barney, and they're out of Omaha, Nebraska, and they have created it's called Empower Omaha, and they took all of their silos and all of the different clusters, from finance to health to children to education, and they put them all in a working hierarchy, and they're like orbiting around each other. And so he's been doing this for the last 10 years, and so now they have a prototype of it, and they're ready to go around the country and helping everybody do the same thing that have that kind of environment. So out of that environment, they actually, I can tell you what their initiatives were. They did a 360, and they focused on seven different areas, and I think that was on, let me see if I can find it was health, it was the arts, and let me give you the mission of the network. And when I first heard about it, I was at the Power Network conference, George Frazier, and so their goal was to engage and educate and empower, but making sure that everybody wasn't working alone. So everyone in the business community, they needed to all come together and work together. All of the community-based organizations all come together to work together. And then the health and education. So they had each group, and now they're all working within it's like a universe, actually, and they're working. So he is open to coming and sitting down with other organizations or other cities and making that and helping us do what they did. So they now have, for their children, they increased their graduation rate up to almost like 95%. So everyone from that 10-year period that they were working on, gone to college, now they are employed. I think at the time when I first met him, the only thing at that time they didn't own was the hospital, and now they own the hospital. And even at the time that they started, they had people from the outside saying, we want to come in and help, white people, other national, and he's like, no, we have to do this ourselves first, and we have to build, it's a 7-step program that they have, and we have to do this. We can't have outside help, because what happens is then we lose our own initiative to do what we're supposed to do, right? So the 7-step empowerment program, and I've spoken to him, and so theirs was employment and entrepreneurship, And that was sustainable living wage work. Everyone wants a job. Everybody gets a job and then a career and a successful business. And then the next one was education and youth development, and to make sure that the graduation rate and the kids graduating had marketable skills and they were prepared for post-secondary secondary education. Sustainable neighborhoods. So they had a whole zone where they built and bought everything, and education programs and for the school, healthy wise, faith, hope, and community engagement, and violence intervention and prevention, health and family services, and finally arts, culture, history, and media and communications.
So this gentleman that you're talking about, where is he from?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh,
his name is Willie Barney.
So we'd have to invite him here and pay his airfare and hotel and all that good stuff.
Yeah. But if we got a group of people to do that, he would come out to all our, we pull all our community-based organizations and everybody else that wanted to get on board, and he would sit down and at least lay out the plan and how they executed it.
I think we need to do something because we constantly rely on the dominant culture to help us, and it's not happening. I mean, and if we do get something, we're going to get a little scrap. And that scrap is not enough to sustain us. We need sustainability, so we got to build our system, our infrastructure, make it work for us. And I don't like throwing out the names of groups and all of that, but I'm just going to do it now. The Asians, you see how they work together?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
They don't go to anyone else. They do it themselves. Mm-hmm. They've got their banks, Asian banks and all, and investors. And, you have other groups that do that. We're the only groups that are not.
And even the Jewish community. There's a book called the Jewish Principle. What is it called? The Jewish Principle. Right. And they actually operate from this same 7-point plan.
And they did it out of the whatever happened in Auschwitz.
Yeah, the Holocaust. So they created
They did it out of that. Mm-hmm. And we are the only ones, we're still here waiting for that 40 acre and a mule, and we're not going to get it. So we got to create our own mule, raise some mules, mm-hmm. and create the lands. You see what I mean? We got to do it.
I think Michael really did touch on it, though, when he talked about the studies that have come out and said how long a dollar stays in a community.
Yes.
And I am a part of a network, African American Attorney Network on Facebook, where we try to make sure that we're getting and finding referrals within our community around the country. Mm-hmm. Started by a gentleman who's a high-powered attorney and just really brilliant, and couldn't figure out why nobody had done it on Facebook before, to use social media just for us to put out those referrals. Mm-hmm. I think we do. There was a great Netflix special, the
Triggering with Killer Mike,
where he tried, and I think I'm often having conversations with people about who their dentist is, who their doctors mm-hmm. are, mm-hmm. even if they are at majority institutions. What you find is they can be at a majority institution and still languish because they're not the first choice for the majority mm-hmm. patient, but they mm-hmm. should be ours.
Right.
And I think there is still a mentality, which, again, we can talk about where it comes from, and it's a long slave narrative mm-hmm. about how we've been taught to distrust each other. Mm-hmm. And, but and it's the psychology of low expectations that we mm-hmm. have for ourselves and we have for each other, but we've got to move past it. And businesses don't always offer you the best customer service. No. That's every business. No. Sometimes businesses have problems on the days you walk in, and that's no reason not for us not to patronize one another and for us not to work together. But I agree with what Michael said about a plan. Mm-hmm. And even when we're talking about doing things ourselves within our own community, we do have allies, and often we don't get the most out of our alliances because we don't go as a community with these bigger picture, what is this, 7-step Omaha empowerment plan, where we're telling them, you're not just going to give us a little bit of money. We have rallied our community, and we've come together and figured out what our needs are and where we're going to put it to use. And now we expect your alliance to come meet us because we know our history in this country, and we've already paid that debt. Mm-hmm. And so I agree. The relationships are key, and people have asked me about the steps I've taken in my career and where I've been and what I've done, and it has always been important to me to be in a room, because so many opportunities, relationships, access to capital come just by being in a room. The number of times I have been in a room where somebody says, well, why exactly are we doing this affinity marketing for Black people? And I've been like, excuse me? I guess I was supposed to be here today to remind you that this is not a question you get to ask.
That's right.
Today, we have paid this forward already. And in corporate America, if we are not there constantly reminding people that there is a debt to be paid, that we are a valuable source and community in this country, sometimes that gets lost on people because we see it from our own perspective. And so it's about building the relationships, but it's also about making sure our pipeline says to our young people, to our old people, to everybody, go get where you need to get and be okay being the only one in the room and be okay standing up for something and be okay trying to navigate those relationships and take what you learn back to our community because we have been divorced for so long from the whole process of something. They kept us down here, and we didn't see that whole process, which is why workforce readiness is also something that I really appreciate, because I think we need to get into places and see what people do and how businesses run and what's successful and see models of leadership and other things. Because one thing about this Empower Omaha concept is we see the successes of big tech companies like Uber and Facebook, and maybe Facebook's not a good example, but we see that, and we think it was just 3 founders sitting in a room, but when you go and actually read their story, you realize they sat in a room, and then they got introduced to this CEO, and then they got invited to attend this think tank at this university, and they did a boot camp on entrepreneurship, and then they did a small business boot camp, and then they got flown to meet the CEO of the similar company, and their private equity investors then got them access to meeting here and flying there. And so we see that and think, oh, it was just them in a room. But it really was an incubation process that was a whole lot of things that came together that prepared those 3 people sitting in a room who don't know any more than we do, aren't any smarter than we are, aren't any more capable, but gave them the tools they needed to level up that business. And so that's what I see this as being about. Like, let's find our people with good ideas.
Yeah, I believe that's what Michael was saying about the relationship.
Absolutely.
That you said it perfect.
Yeah, that was perfect. And that's what we need to do. And actually, we live in a technology world today, so we actually could have a telecommunications conference with Willie Barney and his group, at least to lay the groundwork to have the conversation.
That's true.
Invite those of like-minded and synergy to sit down, and they cover each of those 7 points and tell you how what the ground floor was and how they moved through for the last 11 years in order to do that. So it does appear like they've been doing this Rebuilding the Village conference. They're having it on February 11th. Right, but it's like right now. Yeah. But we could actually have the conversation. I've actually already had an initial conversation with him when I was at the PNC conference last year. And I told him that I was going to come back home and I was going to talk to people. And I've talked to a couple of people. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea, Crystal. But we really need not just talk.
Can you reach out to him?
I can.
And let's organize a conference. And if Michael is available and Shawn, we can do this.
I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
So you guys tell me what you guys want to do, and I will give him a call next week, and let's see what we can get some dates, and we'll reach out. And then I guess we need just to sit down and say, who do we want to invite to this meeting? Now, Michael, a number of years ago, Operation Hope actually did it, and Leo knows how it works because Leo was the one that put it together, and I've actually had this conversation with Leo. They reached out to all the CBOs and all the bankers, and that look like us, and we all sat down and we had a conversation, and then and so John Bryan was putting together something he was doing in Atlanta, and he was presenting it, but Leo knows how they put that together. And the number of people who was invited to sit down and have this conversation, and we were getting to solutions, but then we never went any further. But because I again think we didn't really have a game plan, right? We didn't have we need something that's already out there, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel because that seems so daunting when we say, okay, where do we start from square one? But my thing is, if there's somebody already got a plan and is already successful and it's been working for 10 years, why don't we adopt that?
Why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
Yeah.
So, Michael, let's say a session like this is established. And you mentioned earlier that it's good to know what the game plan is going into sessions and meetings and all that. What do you think our game plan could be for a meeting like this?
I think we have to do it in a way that's different than the way we've done it before. Quite frankly, what I'm hearing us talk about now was what we've done before.
Yeah.
We sit down, we have a conversation, we map something out, we say, oh, this would work, and how do we do this? And we look around the table and we wait for somebody to write the first check. And we're still sitting around waiting for somebody to write the first check. But I will say this is changing. I would point to the Black Economic Alliance, which is a PAC that has it started, I think, late last year. It's an African American PAC that is where people of who have the resources wrote the check. And there is money in the pot to have an influence on the politics of this country in a significant way. But it starts with people making the commitment. If you don't make the commitment, you don't get a seat at the table.
Right.
And then once you have that, now you move on. And this is not a new concept. This is I'm borrowing it from the Jewish tradition. Where's your check? I need it now.
Yeah, there you go.
And if you're not putting in the check, you don't have a say in how this thing is running. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have to limit this to our brothers and sisters in the financial services industry who have all of that money, but we have to meet people where they are. And once you have that commitment, however small, as long as it's significant to that person is now invested. And once you have someone invested in whatever we're going to put together, now people are paying attention. And the next step, which is the step that we don't take. We've had fits and starts in this idea for a long time. Now, mind you, I am not ignoring the fact that we were so far ahead when we had Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, and it was destroyed. Now, and understand, there's no question about it. If we do this, and we do this right,
they're going to come back
again. Will be attacked because they are afraid of us.
And they're at that place right now. They're so terrified right now that they're using whatever guerrilla tactics they really can because they're afraid that, and I think I mentioned to Shawn, and it makes sense to me. If I was sitting in their shoes having done what they've done, then they're probably going, wow, why haven't they attacked us? I'm waiting for them to attack us, right? Because that would be the human reaction to what's going on. The more they suppress, at some point you're going to back them into a corner and they're going to come out and they're going to just to tear to the wind and say, okay, we're done with this. And we're almost there. Those are those little episodes that are happening, and now that racism is out frontal, it's like being in George Wallace territory right now, and it's across the country.
I would suggest to you that it never went
away. It didn't.
It's always been
but
there.
It's been suppressed. But it
hasn't even been suppressed. We just didn't see it.
Ah, okay.
It's there. It's and make no mistake that it is prevalent, and now they feel comfortable saying it out loud, but they were saying it when we weren't in the room.
Oh, yeah.
So it has...
Yeah, because they're too comfortable saying it now for it not to have been conversations already being had.
Exactly. So we need to be very intentional about what we're going to do, and we have to put some skin in the game to move this thing forward. And we can do it. We are the most resilient people on the planet. We are the strongest people on the planet. And it has taken all of their efforts to try to keep us down. And so once we get back on our feet, and we are in the process of doing so, and that's a function of us working together as opposed to working alone.
Yeah.
We are a powerful force, as you guys mentioned in the other session. We are the most creative people on the planet. Mm-hmm. You can't go anywhere in the planet without seeing some vestige of Black American culture. Mm-hmm. And we are not the ones spreading it.
Right.
So they are coming here, taking what we have and reproducing it. Mm-hmm. We're the smartest people on the planet, and they know that the only way to defeat us is with force and incarceration, and literally killing us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
That is the only way to keep us down. So we need to understand how powerful we are. We do not understand our own strength. Mm-mm. We do not understand our own strength.
I think building that into strategy, going in with a strategy, is also recognizing that they're going to come after us too.
Oh yeah, we know that.
And put that strategy to counteract that, because it's going to happen. Any successful entrepreneur ideas, invention, you always have knockoffs. You always have, someone trying to emulate you or suppress you. Like they call them the big box. The big box guys try to step on you. And if they can't step on you, then they try to buy you out.
Acquisition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't happen, then they try to partner with you. Mm-hmm. And when they partner, then they try to suppress you while you're a partner. You see what I'm saying? So that's part of our strategy here, where we want to put that strategy going into this and anticipate that those things are going to happen, so our strategy can circumvent those things.
And I think the Asian is absolutely right, though. You have to use a stealth type of mission.
Oh yeah, you got to be stealth,
because you got to build the foundation strong enough so that while you're stealthily doing it, then and by the time they do get to you, and if your links are strong,
you've got your reinforcements.
Then it's harder to break through a strong link, but it will all of us fragment, which was the reason the colonizers did that in the first place, was to make sure that there was always weak links.
This is definitely a great discussion.
I just wanted to piggyback on your analogy to the Asian strategy, because part of it is having a long-term vision.
Yeah. Yes, you got to have a long-term, like stock, like you're investing an investment.
Right.
So we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for our children below us. That's why I work so hard with the Biz Camp and everything, because it's not about us.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's about our children. Mm-hmm. But right now, I look at my nephews, and they're coming out of school with loans, and they can't leave home. They literally cannot leave home because they can't afford to leave home.
They can't leave home, and their parents can't stop working because they're paying the mortgage.
Right, you're paying the mortgage.
Everybody's locked down. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, we are where we are because we didn't get that head start. Mm-hmm. Every generation starts over. Right. You guys have talked about this so many times. Yeah. You understand it. Your audience understands it. We have to start the next generation with a head start.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, legacy. We have to create the legacy.
The intergenerational transfer of wealth has got to be first and foremost on our minds.
I think so.
So, Crystal, what's our next move on this? Gotta reach out to Mr.
You guys. I'll call him and find out what dates, and then we put together some dates. And Michael, you're sitting at the table. Shawn, you're sitting at the table. Let's get some people that we know gonna make a move, and not just talk about it. And let's make it happen.
Or some of the other people that we can get.
I was just going to add, his event is coming up, so to the extent that he will let us dial into some portion of that,
I will ask that question.
That would be great.
I'll ask all those questions. Yeah, because they have that event coming up on February 11th, and they're not even a big group. They're a small little group of people that have just
But so you couldn't tell. Looking at this, you couldn't tell.
No, when you look at this is literally I think it popped here. That's their whole group.
See, I do agree with the stealth idea. I've been saying stealth for the longest time. You know, when they do see you is when you're super prominent. There's nothing they can do.
There's nothing they can do.
It's
Nothing they can do.
There's nothing they can
Right.
do about it.
Yes, a small group of dedicated people
Exactly.
do wonders.
Oh, yes.
Do wonders.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
And if we care about our community, we care about our children, we care about us as black people, then that's the requisite right there. None of the nonsense, none of the drama. We just got one focus and one focus only, that we're leaving something better for the children that are not even here yet.
Right. Right.
So
We
we're at
have
the top of the hour, and this time went by so quickly.
I know. We had two great guests.
Yes,
We
this is
had
phenomenal.
a great conversation. So our action items, I'll make a phone call on Monday.
Yes.
And then we'll go from there.
Yes.
And actually,
This
Monday,
has to happen.
Yeah, well, actually, Monday
has
we'll be
to
in a
happen.
conference, but I'll leave a message for somebody, but I have their
Yes.
their information,
Yeah,
so
this
I'll
has
make a
to
phone
happen.
call. And I think that's the case, and then we'll go from there.
So we want to thank our very special guest. Do both of you have some final parting words you want to share with our audience?
I just want to thank you for inviting me. This has been wonderful. This type of conversation is the one that we need to have more and more, and we need to follow it up with action. And I love the fact that we have our action plans together.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Definitely.
Shawn?
I just wanted to share something that always heartens me. It's a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., and it says, "Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concerns of dedicated individuals." And it feels daunting at times, but it's what we're here for.
Yeah.
You know, it's our liberty, our economic advancement, the eradication of poverty and economic instability
Yes.
are going to take every day, and we should be proud of those efforts every day.
Yes. Thank you
Okay,
so
fantastic.
much. This has been wonderful.
It's been fantastic. You got anything coming up?
Well, I have a workshop at the Vermont's Lawson Economic Development Center every Tuesday from 5:30 to 9 p.m. And this is at 1130 West Slauson Avenue, Los Angeles. The class that's coming up this Tuesday is procurement and finding contract opportunities. This past Tuesday we had certifications. This time we've had procurement. So it's going to be great.
Okay, and I'm doing the digital marketing classes, helping our business owners create multiple streams of income. Any way that they can bring in more money other than what they're doing from their businesses, which, sometimes just doesn't work. And so I'm doing that. I'm speaking at the annual Coalition of 100 Black Women of the Los Angeles chapter tomorrow.
All right.
For the 4th Annual Women's Entrepreneurial Empowerment Afternoon Tea.
Very good.
So I'm speaking on entrepreneurship, unlocking the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
And then that's tomorrow, the 9th. And then on the following week, which is the 16th, I'm speaking at Jefferson High to young kids, high schoolers, on entrepreneurship. And I'll be talking about the Biz Camp. And then we're actually starting the 15th, we're doing a Biz Camp. It's actually with the YEC, and we're selecting 9 kids to represent the Los Angeles Urban League, and these kids are going to compete. They're going to create a joint project, and they're going to compete for a $5,000 prize, and that's being sponsored by Union Bank and the YEC. So
And we also want to let you all know that the winner of that competition will be on our show as a guest.
Yes, for sure.
Right after.
And then we're gearing up for our 2019 Biz Camp and summer camp that we do in the summer in June and July. So we're
Excellent.
gearing up with that and putting the plan together. And we will be educating 50 students, young people between the ages of 14 and 18.
It's beautiful.
So that's what we're doing.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
All righty, guys. It's been a fantastic show again. I will provide you both with the clip from the show, so you can put it on your websites or wherever you want to do with it.
Do you want to real quickly give a phone number, an address, location, how people can get a hold of you?
I can be reached. I'll give you my personal email, michael.lawson@laul.org. We're at 4401 Crenshaw Boulevard, Suite 201.
Excellent.
And I'm Shawn Ray White at gmail.com.
Okay.
Excellent.
All righty, guys. So enjoy your Black History Week activities, and we will be back next week. I will have gone through a whole lot of Black History events next week. It's like on and kicking now. The Pan-African Film Fest is in place starting this week, I think. And so we'll be there, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. So you guys enjoy. Share on our Facebook page, The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, where you're going. And we'll see you next week.
And
Have a great week.
you know, The Business Zone is on every Friday from 3 to 5, morrismedialive.com. And we look forward to having you. We're out.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.
As a small biz pro, I saw we roll, using procurement, program, and control. As a small biz pro, I saw we grow, using procurement, program, and control. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. Crystal Mitchell, do you have my business plan? Just review the pages of my marketing plan. Crystal Mitchell, do you have my business plan? Just review the pages of my marketing plan. Got my capability statement, yes, I'm ready to go. Got my balance sheet, my P&L, my statement of cash flow. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Ooh, yeah. Crystal Mitchell, do you have my business plan? Just review the pages of my marketing plan. Crystal Mitchell, do you have my business plan? Just review the pages of my marketing plan. Got my capability statement, yes, I'm ready to go. Got my balance sheet, my P&L, my